Greetings. Welcome to the Captive Desk. Please join me in welcoming Tony Reed to the Captive Desk. You may know Tony from the debate scene on YouTube. Tony dove right in and debated Kent Hovind, as well as other names many of you know, like Nephilim Free, Ahmed Eshra at Finding Truth, and Mr. Batman. Tony has been on numerous channels like Modern Day Debate, SFT's channel, the Non Sequitur, and Finding Truth's channel, debating evolution, creationism, and related topics. Tony's been on Paulogia. He's been on numerous panel discussions, including with Paulogia, Jackson Wheat, and the late Bill Ludlow. May he rest in peace. If you are looking for a comprehensive addressing of creationist talking points, Tony's series, How Creationism Taught Me Real Science, is it. He covers polystrate trees, Grand Canyon, clams on mountaintops, Lucy, soft tissue and dino fossils, the peppered moths, short period comets, the eye, ocean salinity, oil and coal formation, the magnetic field, and many more. I think the count is 104 videos in the How Creationism Taught Me Real Science series. If you haven't seen Tony's series, check them out. They are well done, well sourced, well addressed, concise, and great for a binge on some great content countering creationists. Link to Tony's channel is in the description. I think it is one of the best series addressing creationist claims on YouTube. Tony also enjoys doing some graphics and music productions, and his Christmas video has become an annual post. Hello, Tony. It's indeed a pleasure to talk with you. I've enjoyed your debates and your video series very much over the years. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow, an amazing amount of homework you've done there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much how many channels I've been on debating. That's interesting. It's always just it's been kind of something in the background, but wow. Okay, well, impressive. Thanks
Good
for
for
having
you.
me.
Hey, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Been a fan for a long time, and I hope you're going to do stuff in the future too. You're very popular out there. I know a lot of folks would love to see more content from you.
Well, I'll do my best on that, but part of the success of what I do is that people don't know what they're expecting when they click on the videos. So it works for and against me. This is a hobby for me. I have other things I do for a living, but it is interesting that that I do get the response I get, and I do my best to make sure that I keep my videos concise so most people can just stick with it. I don't do anything long form.
Well, before you stepped into doing the video and debate scene, let's start out. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself? Were you raised in a religious environment, in a science environment? Was there a lot of music influence when you were growing up?
Interesting. None of those. Almost none of that. I was not raised in an overtly religious family. My family wanted me to be exposed to all the religions, so they definitely didn't mind me going to church with friends of theirs, or synagogue with friends of theirs, or even a Mormon temple with friends of theirs. They just didn't want to really expose me. They didn't want to make that decision for me. So they kind of let me go ahead and make my own decisions on that. As far as science, my father was a bit more into science because he was an engineer, or he wanted to be an engineer. He was always striving to that, and he spent his 40s getting all the certifications he needed to become an engineer. But by that time, it was a little late for him to have a career with it. My mom, on the other hand, she was aware of science, but not really familiar with it. She just knew what was out there. So she exposed me to things, but she never really fleshed in or filled in all the dots. So I guess I came to it from a blank slate and kind of deduced everything that I thus far have accepted from there.
Interesting. So what
Uh,
about it? What
uh,
about
as far as music goes, though, my parents could not agree on music, and because of that, I mean, there's a lot of country in the house because my mom was more into older, like early 60s, pre 60s rock. My dad was into everything that pretty much came after that. And so what really led to the thing that influenced me the most between them, they could settle on country if they were in the car together, but what they really could agree with was stand-up comedy. And so it was interesting later on when I got into stand-up comedy that my parents were gone already, and so I had this entire library of decades worth of stand-up comedy to go through and just get an idea of how the that craft is done. And obviously I'm not a stand-up comic for a living, so that tells you how good I was. But I mean, I did learn a lot, and I do apply that in my daily life. I work in an online industry, but I do apply it. So,
and what about going through school and everything? What kind of influences did you get there?
um, high school and college. I mean, there was a lot of campus people that I saw that were definitely promoting religious views. I didn't really run into anybody that was promoting, evolution or anything like that. But I mean, they're taught, and even in high school, I think the entire education in my high school biology classes was maybe a total of a week that we discussed evolution, and so the rest was just biology taught possibly from a nested hierarchy point of view, but there was no mention of evolution or anything like that. Never was. In fact, one of my issues with science as I was taught it is that it really isn't taught as a process. It's more taught as a set of facts that you got to memorize, and that's
Mm.
really not what science is. Science is a process of deducing reality, and I think if we start science classes, I know I'm going way off subject here,
No,
but
go
I
ahead.
think if we start teaching science from the beginning as a process of how to deduce things and using exercises regarding deducing reality from it, we might have a better as a society a bit better understanding of science.
Well, speaking of, how did you do when you went to school? Did you do good in science class? Did you have music class or anything like
I did
that you
very
enjoyed?
I did very well in high school. I did very well in pre high school. I did very well in science classes despite being unwilling to do a lot of homework. I did. That really is what countered against me when I went to college. And obviously, in college, they care more about your proficiency than anything, and so I was able to keep my sort of, I guess you could say, lazy ways about me and get through college. What really got me into science was, again, well, I don't know about again, but was actually stumbling across Kent Hovind's videos. Once I came across his videos, then I started fact checking, and that's really when even after college. I mean, it was only after reading and watching Ken Hovind's videos that I really started exploring science and discovering that it's not just again, it's a process. It's not a bunch of facts. And he came to his conclusions without using that process in any way.
Yeah, you've got an interesting story that, and a lot of people have a similar thing that we didn't hear about a lot of the creationist things until we were older. I assumed a lot of people were raised on it, but some were, but a lot of us we didn't even hear about it till we were older. And I guess you're in that same group. And what did you think when you first saw Kent Hovind?
Well, I'd heard about the creationist arguments. I just didn't I think I probably did an online search because I'd probably 20 some years at the time, maybe even 30 years at the time of not really having an educated opinion on things. I decided to look up evolution and creation issues, and before that, I would say that I had no scientific knowledge really of it. I had no understanding of the scientific process. And so watching Ken Hovind's videos, I was able to uncover not only the scientific sources, but then the when you ask how could you come to this conclusion when the data says this, and that really led to me really finding out what the scientific process is and the idea of a scientific prediction, of course, and then using that prediction to actually do something in the real world, a world application, as I say. That all came. I mean, that was. It's not that I had learned about creationism. It's that I'd known all the time that there was this debate. I just didn't have an opinion on it. And then, of course, Ken Hovind, thankfully, if you want to say it, it
Kind of
gave me
weird how
a
things work out, isn't it?
he gave me a springboard to go ahead and figure out what the facts were.
And how did you stumble on his? Was it online or was it?
It was online via YouTube. I actually started on YouTube 3 months after the channel was founded. It was I think I don't know what month in 2014, but I joined 3 months after that was. So if you look at
Mm,
my channel, you notice I've been on YouTube since 2014. I initially started that specifically so that I could maybe market my music and my stand-up comedy and the things I was doing as an artist to the public, and just obviously there's only so much you can do when you only have so much output you can have as a musician, especially with recording time and things like that, putting together music videos. Stand-up comedy, if you've ever done that, that takes a long time to actually write, and so you have spare time, you're on YouTube, you want to see what else everybody else is doing, and it was a different environment then as far as how it was done. There was a different rating system, but at the time, that's kind of what got me onto YouTube, is just wanting to promote my artistic something, my artistic work.
yeah, I noticed that, and you've talked about it that you had your videos and everything, and you were just yeah, your direction wasn't that at the first place. It was to do your other thing, and then you decided to start your series. So was this a culmination to of all the research, and you said, "Hey, I just want to put these ideas down"?
It was a culmination of several years of debate, because you go onto the Kent Hovind videos, and I went through the entire seminar and I made my comments public. I don't even and unfortunately the YouTube has done a couple reboots of the system. So my initial channel name, I think it was QABALA Kabbalah, that you find comments under that might be me, but I did I did every single episode on that in that series. And so what happened is, after time, I started seeing other comments on other videos, and I couldn't just let those pass. So I started debating with people constantly. And over time, I just accumulated enough knowledge that I started thinking maybe I should go ahead and do something online. And my initial thought was to try to do something like the Talk Origins archive, but in video form. And what I figured out pretty early on is that if you start to cover one subject in, because the way the Origins archive is set up, you can narrow it down to certain very small subjects, but some of those subjects just won't carry a single episode. They won't carry a full episode anyway. And so I just ended up expanding each episode and what it was about. And so with that came me doing a lot more homework. And then also came the the result of that was people recognizing the amount of homework I did. And then suddenly it became almost a fixation that I had to do as much research as I could possibly do for subjects that perhaps I might not have known much about, but make sure I went through the peer reviewed sources, and that's kind of it. Just kind of expanded from there. It started very simply, and I went through a few different incarnations in my head anyway, and somewhat on online of how I would put together a show. One of them was I did one that was just it's called I think four creationist lies, and I was going to try to do a series of just videos that were just four creationist lies, and I did 2 episodes. They were both about Lucy, and it just didn't quite gel. And then once I put together my, I guess you could say, Poe intro show of how creationism taught me real science, I really thought to myself, the part about this that's going to really stick is that people that aren't interested in learning about the actual science are going to be sort of forced to watch it and be exposed to the science simply because they're they're already clickbaited into watching something thinking that they'll just have their own views reinforced.
Right.
But I did that in such a way. I know that people get upset about it, but the title is not really wrong because that is exactly how I came across science is by watching Ken Hovind's videos and then debunking them. And so the first few episodes are almost exclusively devoted to arguments that I learned from Ken Hovind. And from those I was able to deduce reality. So that's why I call it How Creationism Taught Me Real Science.
I think it's a good catch, and the way you do the intro to it, I think that's a good catch. It's well done, very well done, and
Yeah, that intro. Yeah.
it just kind of yeah, like I understand, just doing a couple of my own videos. It's a lot of work and a lot of thought into it, and what are you gonna call it?
Yeah.
Just making titles for my guests. Like when I talk with you, I have to, well, what am I gonna call it? Well, and then you looking through your stuff, well, reading between the lines. There we go. So you helped me out a little bit. I appreciate it.
Well, that was what's funny is I was actually I went to Peter. I actually had somebody make that intro because I have a I think I've talked to you about this. I am a control freak, and I have a problem with letting people take control of things. I even if I want to, I'm a big I get a lot of requests for collaboration, and it's hard for me to do that because I want the product to be a certain way, and I for read between the lines, which I've only got 1 episode so far. I had Peter from Gonna Go For It go ahead and design that intro, and that was a big step for me because I put it in somebody else's hands, and I think he delivered. It's just it's hard for me to do that to let people participate. I just gotta have control.
I like doing my own thing too. I was talking with you a little bit that I just started cold. I just turned on my camera, and then little by little I've been learning how to do the editing and put together the videos and everything, do it everything all. And it, you know, I'm that way. I like to do a lot of things myself. I fix things around the house myself, and when I have to call a repairman, I'm always standing there gritting my teeth, like, oh, if I just had that tool, I could do that.
Yeah, I feel that way because nowadays I call a repairman not because I can't do it, but because I don't want to do it. And so
Yeah,
I'll watch him work.
I
I'll be
hear
like,
that.
"Here, do you want this tool? This might help you." So fortunately, my dad was a I can't say he was a mechanic, but he had an amazing set of tools. He worked. Actually, he was a mechanic in a way. He did work in the garage all the time fixing cars, but my dad worked for the Naval Air Rework Facility in uh, North Island, which is part of San Diego, California, and he had an amazing set of tools, but I mean, I guess he was a thief because nearly half of them had the letters NARF, which stands for Naval Air Rework Facility, was stenciled in all of them. And unfortunately, I would ask him about that. Why do you steal so many tools? And he said, well, it's going to keep our budget up. So that could probably lead to a fantastic argument about the budget, the military, things like that. But the thing is, I grew up in a house that had amazing tools that not just and actually I'm kind of understating it because it wasn't just like wrenches. I mean engine hoists. He was able to steal engine hoists from work. I'm not proud of that, and I'm sure if he was around now, he'd probably be very upset about it. But what a clever guy, and I got to really get a good experience with some of the most advanced tools of the time.
Yeah, I remember my dad had a few things that had markings on them from work. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, that's true.
May he rest in peace. But yeah, my dad taught me basics, so I did learn basics and
Nice.
basics on the cars and everything. And then later on, when I was working on cars, he came to me one day and he said, "I can't do this anymore. It's your turn to work on my car."
How'd that feel?
It's one of those moments, where
Yeah,
but my dad realized that it was beyond his capabilities anymore, with all the electronics they were putting on the cars and everything. And so
I
he
had a moment like
realized,
that with my own dad. In the I had a car. It was a German car. It was a BMW, and he had cancer. He was already going through chemo, but he knew I needed to fix the car, and so he had me come back over to his garage, and he's like, I can't do it for you. I need you to be the hands. And I went, Dad, you sit back and let me show you what I've learned. And so I got to show him what I had learned from years of being in a garage with him, working on Fords and Chevys and certain Japanese models, but still being able to apply that knowledge to a BMW, which he had never worked on. That was very nice. And then I also got the same opportunity with my mom as she was dying. She was very big into cooking and wanted to teach me culinary skills because, in her words, the woman you marry is not going to know how to cook. I'm not going to say she was right, but I can tell you that that skill has come into play. And I was very glad that in her last few days or last few weeks, I was able to show her that I had learned from her. And so both parents, I got to show them that I got the unique opportunity to show them that my apprenticeship under them wasn't in vain.
my mother loved my cooking. She would get a taste for something, and she would, because being older, she didn't want to make, all that for herself. And I've got a taste for something. She would drop the hint. It's like, all right, I'll make it. Come on over. And
Nice.
matter of fact, the night my mom passed away, she was over here having dinner for my son's birthday. And then that evening, some popped in her head. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
her last meal was here with us. So it was, you make the best of it. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
were just all together and everything, and then she passed away. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, my mom and my dad. I worked on everybody's cars, all. So, but yeah, those days are past. I get the wife a brand new car, and when it gets to a certain mileage, we just trade it in. I'm like, I don't want to do all that anymore.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't do the work on, especially now because um, when I was working on cars, everything was in fact mechanical.
Mm.
Now everything is electronic.
And
Uh,
it's good, but you also have to have all the equipment now too. So
yeah,
yeah.
it's not just going to take a wrench now. It now takes a little bit more finesse that I don't want to. I just don't want to take the time to put that in to get that education.
Well, then speaking of hobbies, with the music thing, then What got you into the music hobby?
Well, I got into the music hobby. I can tell you where it began. It was sometime in the early or to mid '70s, and maybe it was late '70s. But either way, I would sit there listening to music with my parents, and then one day there's a song that came on that just I'd never heard anything like it, and it ended up being "I Feel Love" by Donna Summer, which
Hmm.
I had never heard anything like that at the time. It turns out later on I found out about bands like Kraftwerk and Tangerine Dream and New and Sylvester, but at the time I'd never really heard about electronic music. And then as time went by, I found myself listening to bands like Depeche Mode and New Order, Men Without Hats, Devo, and so that's what I wanted to do. And when I wanted to explore, and my parents got me one of those in the 80s. There's a big trend of these little keyboards, these little synthesizer keyboards. They
Hmm.
were everywhere, and they had everybody was jumped into the market. And Yamaha happened to jump into the market with a kind of keyboard that was I think they were under this misguided idea that people that were buying synthesizers were trying, or home synthesizers were wanting to get into actual synthesis of sounds instead of just playing something with common already pre-programmed sounds. So it had this little synthesizer where you could adjust the attack, decay, the wave, the waveform, and all that, the sustain, the release, all that, and uh, and that kind of got me into really changing sounds, making up sounds, and then using them into a song. And then that just systematically led to me starting to record it. And so I started doing stuff that was sort of a hybrid between techno, trance, and maybe synth pop and new wave. I ended up putting out actually three albums by myself, but I mean they didn't do anything. Nobody bought them, but I was contractually obligated to provide them, so I did. And every with every single album I put my heart and soul into it, but I wasn't especially very good apparently. Um, Nobody bought it. The people that went to my for my shows, people stayed home in droves. I noticed.
Well, the beauty of art is in the eye of the beholder. You express yourself, and that's other people get it or they don't. There's not much you can
Yeah.
do there.
Some people, there's a couple songs that haunt
It's
me
still
every
a
now and
great
then.
it's still a great hobby though.
Oh yeah, it's fun. I mean, I've gotten back together with my old band mates from a long time ago, and we're now doing something over the internet. But we're all one of us is in Montana, one of us is in Boston, the other one's in Washington D.C. But we're all kind of going over our old stuff from extraneous to my electronic work, and we're just we're putting that together. Hopefully, it'll at least be something that will stick around. I mean, it won't be probably won't ever be anything popular, but it's nice to immortalize something in a recording.
And it's a lot easier to immortalize it with posting it online now because it's stuff's out there, and a lot of a friend of mine, I've been trying to get him to do stuff, and if you're watching, Brian, you need to do some stuff. You have talent. I'm telling you, you got to make some videos. But his daughter did I think a couple videos and posted them, and it's beautiful, and it's just she just popped her camera on, grabbed the guitar, and not everybody's going to be a rock star, but a lot of those videos, people enjoy watching them.
You never know.
And you never know. That's right. You never know. Simon or somebody could be out there watching. So
Simon, yeah. Uh,
I know it's a
I
name that comes to mind.
Well, yeah, it's funny because I wrote one of the other hobbies I have, and there's a video for a couple. There are videos on my channel for a couple of my screenplays where I did what are called video pitches, which are meant to be like 2.5 minute, as if you're making a trailer for your movie, and that's how you pitch your script. And I've done one about the history of Saint Nicholas. I know it sounds dull, but there's some pretty crazy legends associated with it. But I also did a script for a movie about synth pop and electronic music, and one of the characters in that is based on Simon Cowell, um, very obviously named Sidney Cromwell. So obviously there's the but I actually, it was funny because I was well aware of him long before the American Idol show, and
Mm.
I actually had very, very um, definite opinions about him before that.
Everybody does.
Yeah, yeah.
So we I told Tony before that we'll have a little fun here near the end. We've got a little quiz. We're going to see how well Tony knows the music trivia world. So stay
Uh,
tuned. I know people don't like to watch to the end of the video, but you got to stay tuned till the end. Okay, don't leave us. All right. And I see Spooky and Scott Duke in the chat. Hello, good to see you guys. And then you debated Kent Hovind how many times then?
I've only debated him once,
You only
and
debated. I thought there was more than one out there.
no,
Okay,
just one. Although
just the
there's a
one.
lot of
Okay.
people. There's a guy out there by the name of, I think, David Reed, and his last name is spelled Reid, and people often confuse me with him, and they often will ask me to be accountable for certain things that he said. I'm like, well, why? He's not the same person. He's got a last name that sounds similar to mine or sounds identical to mine, but it's not spelled the same way. We're not obviously related. Why would I be responsible for what he said? But yeah, I've only debated him once, and that was it was. I mean, in the end, we didn't get to finish it. He didn't want to continue. He was telling us it was too late. But I mean, we were supposed to do our closing arguments. He didn't want to bother with the closing arguments, and so he just kind of stayed on the subject of trying to prove that evolution wasn't true. The entire point of the debate was to be, what are the real applications of evolution versus the real world applications of creationism. He would not engage in that subject. He just kept trying to go,
Mm-hmm.
well, evolution can't be true because of this. I'm like, even if it's not true, here's what we can do with it. We can use it to predict this and use that to go ahead and do something in the real world that actually helps people. Did not happen. He wouldn't even address that, and so I guess he bailed out. He kind of called it early, but I mean, there was a vote on that was associated with that. You could see what their people's views were before the video. You could see what people's views were after the video, and with that, you could see that it wasn't like there was a clear winner, but by far the people that had maybe felt more about creationism, more for it, made more sympathetic, were less sympathetic by the end of it, and people that were more sympathetic toward the evolution point of view. I mean, they kind of retained that view, so it was I consider it a victory, but I mean, it was one of the few times where you even have a metric for determining how whether somebody won a debate, which is one of the things I have against the debates in the first place, is that for the most part, there's really no way to determine who the winner is. Like Dave Farina versus James Tour. How do you determine who won that?
Right. You go in with one side or the other type thing.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
well,
it's
I
yeah.
was going to point out Snake was right with his debate cafe. They do scoring at the end, so
No,
that is somebody that does that. So
nice. I wish I'd done that. I should have done that because I like Snake was right. It's just I don't watch a lot of long form videos. I kind of keep I have a short attention span, so I tend to watch 10 to 20 minute videos unless it's a subject that I'm really studying. And I'm not usually studying a lot of the debates because most of the debates are pointless bickering.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many they have, but they do have some, and he has a co-host that does it. I'm not remembering her name off the top of my head. Sorry, but
That's all right.
yeah, they do scoring at the end. So yeah, that is you know, at least you have somebody that's saying, well, how did you guys at least do? You know,
Yeah, that's a at least there's a metric because otherwise, again, the whole James Tour versus Dave Farina when it was over. I mean, did anybody win? Did anybody look good in that video in that debate? I don't think anybody did. I don't think James did. I don't think Dave did. Neither one of them did either. Neither one of them did a service to their position. No, neither one of them did.
and both have put a lot of work into their videos.
Yes, yeah,
You know,
definitely.
the back and forth has gone on, and they put a lot of work into it. But you know, there was a lot of frustration. You know, there was bad blood going on, so
Yeah,
I guess it came to a boiling point, and you know, it happens. It happens. So.
yeah.
But I mean, both you know, to Tour's credit, he is respected in his field, but he kind of steps out of his field, and I think that's what Dave has the biggest problem with.
Yeah, it's just very difficult to. I mean, I know that there's an issue with the argument from authority fallacies, but when somebody does have some knowledge in their field, they're difficult to argue with. It's the thing is that James Tour has convinced people that his field is relevant, and to a small degree it is, but he really isn't. He's not in his field either. Dave Farina, I think, gosh, this is going to probably not go over well, but I don't know if Dave. I'm not convinced that Dave Farina actually read all of the sources that he was citing, and so that's one of the reasons why I felt it was it was a cringe moment when James was asking him to well, was challenging some of his assertions based on his the papers he was citing, saying, "Well, that's not what the paper says." And Dave's response is, "Well, look at the title." I
Mm-hmm.
am inundated with every single episode, every other episode at least, with arguments about what the title of a paper is. Papers are titled, even in the peer reviewed literature, they're titled with a little bit of a sensationalist nature to them. And so when you have a paper like the one by I think it was Kondrashov. Why have we not died 100 times over for the crumbling genome, which was essentially the basis for Sanford's argument about genetic entropy? Well, he actually answers that question. He answers why have we not died 100 times over. He actually answers that question in well, he says four different ways. I say five different ways in the very same paper, but people don't read it, and the people that cite it for the most part for creationist publications, they obviously haven't read it. They just use the title, and so that's one of the things if I have a criticism of Dave Farina is that he didn't show familiarity with the papers he was citing.
And it's the audience you're speaking to too, because if you're just speaking to a general audience, you got to speak to us too, because just throwing around a bunch of big words and citing papers may sound good, but it doesn't really mean anything to us that are watching.
I gotta agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Speaking to I hate to use the term layman audience, but I mean because I'm technically a layman as well. But I do notice that if you go into extreme descriptions of technical using technical jargon, you're going to lose people. And so that's one of the things I try to do with my videos is try to keep the I tried to keep the verbiage very simple, not too technical, but as later episodes have gone on, especially once I start talking about information theory and intelligence and complexity theory, those require a little bit more finesse. And so trying to come up with ways to explain those in terms that the average person can understand. Two things. Number one, that's already a challenge in and of itself, and even more so, it really helps if you've actually read what you're quoting, because then you can actually summarize it for the layman.
Yeah, because like you were saying, it loses you, and I've noticed that when I get to that point where wait a minute, I got to start taking notes, and I've got to get out a thesaurus, and and when I have done that, you find out that you find a lot of word salad was being used. So
Yeah,
I have suspicion that sometimes it's a tactic to use that you sound really good, but maybe it's a little bit of word salad just to sound good.
that is absolutely correct, and I've got to give Tour some commendation on that, because his arguments are, although they are always arguments from ignorance, it's still, we don't know this because we've tried this. And if you do show, like at first his arguments were, we don't know how to form proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleotides. And then, once somebody showed him that we do, then suddenly his argument changed to, well, we don't know how to form those in a prebiotic context. And then once we
Mm.
start showing him how that's done, then he says, well, yeah, but how do you interrupt the side chains? And how do you
The
prevent
the
that?
the Futurama video always comes to mind.
Yeah. So
Well, what about this one? Well, what about this one? Well, what about this one?
exactly. And the cool thing about that for him is that no matter how much we learn, no matter how many times we show him that whatever it is isn't a problem, there will always be a new question for him to ask. And so if you want to do a career on creationism or on science and fact checking it, that's the best way to do it, is constantly stay in the area where science does not know, and then from there you say, well, yeah, but what about? So it's an indirect way of moving the goalpost every time the goalpost is met.
And speaking of debates too, what do you think about the importance of the moderator?
I'm already having a hard time accepting the importance of the debate. So the moderator, I have my opinions on moderators, but ultimately, I mean, and I haven't watched Snake
Because
Was Right.
with
Sorry
the
about it.
tour debate, it was just the moderator didn't do anything. He didn't keep the
Yeah.
audience in line, didn't keep the debaters in line, and the one time that he said something about maybe we could talk more about the science and stop with all the diagrams, Tour turned right around and started drawing on the chalkboard again. The one time that he suggested, hey, and I think that was to his credit, he did say something that, hey, he was maybe trying to get him to talk to the audience about the science, but I didn't think he did a good job communicating it.
I agree with you. I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, I have to admit, when I watched it, I was more.
I made a little video on it, so
Did
I
you?
rewatched it a bunch of times in editing, so it's burned in my brain.
I will be watching it after this, but I mean, I'm
Mine is
sure I
a
watched it.
mine is a very condensed version. So if you want the short version, my version is for you.
I will definitely check that out. I think I have watched it. It's just that, I mean, I watch a lot of content, but yeah,
7 minutes is right up your
so-
alley.
oh,
7 minutes.
definitely, it's way, yeah,
Well,
definitely
in a
in my
seven
alley.
something, but around 7 minutes. Yeah.
Fair enough. It's less than 10 minutes. It'll work. I again, I don't find that the well. First of all, science is not settled via debates. Um, my opinion is that science is settled by what you can do with it. And, if you can predict the evidence beforehand, that's something that makes it scientific. If you can use that prediction to do something in the real world that maybe saves lives or makes lives better, enhances people's lives, then even better. I mean, but one of the things about creationism that I've noticed is it does neither of those things. You cannot take the assumption that a god or an intelligent designer created the universe, and from there deduce anything that will save people's lives, that will cure a disease, that will build or will build a society. Will not be there will be nothing that I mean, you would never be able to find petroleum using that. You would never be able to deduce what active agents will kill a brain eating amoeba, but you can do all of those with the notions of an old Earth, with the notions of common descent, and there are even other applications for abiogenesis. There's even ways to predict the evidence with the Big Bang, and that's the thing that I'm arguing from, is from utility. What can we do with the proposition you're giving us? If we can't do anything with it, you're going to have to really find some other reason for me to actually want to care about what you're proposing. And what I've noticed is that the only really utility anybody gives for what they're proposing is avoiding an eternal torment.
Hmm.
And that, I mean, where do you go with that? I mean, that's just, it's like, okay, so we can't prove it. You're just saying, here's what's going to happen if you die.
That was the one thing that was clinging with my wife's beliefs was the fear of hell.
I
And
can see that.
I actually took some time and said, hey, this is what the Bible really says. It doesn't really say the things you think it says. And I think that helped her a lot with letting go of that last little bit, because I do think I agree with you. I think that is the one thing that it comes down to is fear of death and what's gonna happen to you, just in case your conscience isn't all that clear.
Yeah.
And with
That's the unfortunate
Christianity,
part.
you get, if you accept Jesus, well, then it gets washed away anyway. So it's in a way, even better than a lot of other religions that are gonna put you on a balance in the afterlife, where Jesus says, you don't have to step on the balance if you accepted me.
Well, that's, as you haven't gone into any detail, but I'm an ordained reverend with a doctorate
It's
degree in divinity.
it's in my
Um,
notes here. I was going to
and
ask you about the divinity. Yeah.
and
Again,
also,
I love guests. You and a lot of other my guests are just great and fantastic. You almost follow right along with my notes without even knowing them, and I appreciate it. Yeah, so go ahead. I wanted to hear
well,
about the divinity.
that the thing is, the emphasis in that was on apologetics, and one of my favorite arguments, my go-to argument, was when somebody would say, "Well, why would I follow Jesus as opposed to any other deity out there?" And we can make all the arguments against it that we want. So I'm going to give you my response to that, but just know that even I can see the weaknesses of it. But here was my response. My go-to response was, of all of the gods in every pantheon, in every religion, Jesus is the only one who ever met us halfway and said, "Look, you're not going to be perfect, but I can forgive you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Then why don't you just follow me, and I'll be your advocate in the afterlife. All you have to do is believe in me, and you can fail, but as long as you admit that you're wrong, I'll accept you." Um, I challenge you to find any other deity that has done that. There are other deities that have better policies, I think, but that is the one deity that says judgment is coming, but hey, I got your free pass out.
A lot of the teachings I don't have a problem with. I just have the problem with I agree more with the religions that put you on a balance. That it's for me, true justice is being put on the balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just again,
Just that's just
it's
my view of true justice is all. That
It would be
if you did something wrong, but you made up for the wrong, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Rather than doing the wrong and then, well, you got forgiven. Well, that's fine, but did you make up for the wrong? That's that's where I like the balance of the
I think
religions that put you on the balance.
I think most people probably would agree with you on that. I think also most people, especially if they're hypochondriacs like myself, might spend the rest of their life worrying whether they've done enough.
That's a good point.
I
Yes.
think that's sort of what was it? The Egyptians, if I'm not mistaken, the Egyptians had this belief that their soul was weighed against the weight of a feather, and if
Mm.
it was heavier than a feather, then they didn't go to Egyptian heaven. I'm not sure if I'm
Well,
correct
I know
about that.
the balance is in a lot of religions, though, that in one way or another, yeah, you're going to get weighed against. And well, there is they do talk about judgment in Christianity, but it seems to be a moot point if you're forgiven anyways. You know, then what's the point of having a trial? You know what I'm. So I that's always been a confusing thing of, well, what's the judgment for? Is it just to put it in the books, but then you're forgiven, and you know it's. But I don't want. We don't need to get deep into that.
Yeah,
That's for another day.
no problem.
Well, and as far as your other debates, and what did you think about doing the other debates with the Nephilim Free and Mister Batman? Those are the names I think everybody knows.
Um, with Nephilim Free, the thing is, I mean, he did that Gish Gallop thing where he went down a list of different items that he said were predicted by creationism. And what I tried to point out is that no, those weren't predicted by creationism. Those were discovered, and then afterward is when people that accepted creationism or believed in creationism then decided, well, yeah, this would be expected if you believed in creationism. And that's what that actually helped me a lot, because now I have a new verbiage I can use. Is only after the discovery is made do we see creationists saying they would have expected it, because that is exactly what it is. It's about predictions. The thing about predictions is you make them beforehand. That's what the whole prefix pre means. It means you make it before. Diction meaning speaking. So speaking beforehand, you say what's going to happen. If you are doing it afterwards, you are not making a prediction. You are at best making a retrodiction, is what I
And
think
that
somebody else has called it.
I've had this discussion with many, and it's really hard for them to understand because they keep bringing up things, and it's like, no, that's something that's already known. That's that's not a prediction, and I don't know if they're doing it just to stonewall you or if they really just don't understand what it means.
I got a feeling that there. It's. I mean, again, I don't like. I've said this in a couple other. I don't like to speak for other people, but it is very, very. It's intrinsic to my nature to say, well, yeah, obviously this is true. This is obviously evidence for whatever I believe, because look, this is what I believe and accepts this. But the difference is I'm realizing that I'm making that afterwards, because then once you say that this is consistent with what you believe, if you're wanting to provide that as evidence for what you believe, then you need to go ahead and use what you believe and what this little piece of evidence is, and then use that to make a prediction about future evidence that is a novel prediction, something we wouldn't know otherwise. And that is it. In that sense, I use the term Monday morning quarterback when I'm referring to a lot of creationist predictions. It's after the discovery is made is when we find out that, oh yeah, this would have been predicted, would have been expected. Well, why didn't you expect it beforehand?
Yeah, I know Kent Hovind's favorite response is, "I predict the sun will come up tomorrow," and it's like, well,
How is that a novel prediction?
that's a safe bet, but it's not a novel prediction, right?
Yeah. And actually, I think maybe the word novel is what's important. It's not so much that that you're making a prediction. It's that you're making a novel prediction, and then more so, you're making hopefully you're making the assertion that, and if this is not true, then my assumption is wrong. And that is not something you can do with creationism, because even if every prediction from from creationism turns out to be wrong, you're still going to be a creationist. If we hadn't seen the homology that would have been predicted by the assumption of a common designer, if we hadn't seen that, you would still accept common designer as your explanation, even if we didn't see. Well, actually, there's a few things I forgot what we were talking about before, but it just the thing is, even if you don't see the the phenomenon that is predicted by whatever creationist prediction or retrodiction has been given, you wouldn't have changed your view. Whereas with evolution, every single prediction that is wrong causes them to revise and reformulate their predictions based on the assumption of common descent, or any of the other I would call them sub theories of evolution, because there really is no theory of evolution. There's a theory of common descent, the theory uh, of random mutation versus natural selection. So it's really about the predictive nature, and that's where I go with it.
Well, you pointed out earlier that they didn't really cover evolution specifically in class. But again, if you have biology class, even if you're dismissing the theory of evolution, if you ask back, well, what part of the biology book do disagree with? Then does because most of it, all of the biology is evolution. It's just not specifically speaking of the mechanisms, but it's speaking of all the animals, how they reproduce, how they share their genes. All that stuff's all going on in there. Even if you don't put it together with the word evolution, if you read a biology book, a lot of it's still in there. So
I would
the
I would
question
agree.
back is what I always ask back is what fields of science do creationists accept, even if they don't like some of the theories? And then it kind of gets tricky because a lot of that stuff is still in that field of science.
Yeah, it's true. As far as the mention of evolution, you're right. They go out of their way not to mention evolution. I may even go so far as to say that's not helping, because they go out of their way to water it down so they don't offend anybody. But really, again, like I said, if we taught it as a process, uh, beginning, from whenever you would start teaching children about science, I don't know, third, fourth, fifth grade, whatever, even sooner. If you taught it as a process, then none of this will be that surprising. I mean, none of it would be such a revelation to find out that when we assume that organisms have a common ancestor, we should expect this. And you could talk about what the genetic information is. You could talk about even using, if we assume that there's common descent, if we assume also uniformitarian principles, we should expect to find this fossil or fossils like this here. And then you go look in that area and you find it. If you look at science as a process rather than a collection of facts, I think a lot of those issues might not immediately, but might eventually disappear.
Because a lot of them are again the speed of light. Well, okay, if you dismiss the speed of light, what else do you dismiss in physics? If you're dismissing abiogenesis, well, what other problems do you have with chemistry? So it just raises that, and
Well, with
I
those questions again, with chemistry and abiogenesis, again, it exists in the area where we don't have the actual knowledge of how life came about. We also don't know how life could come about. And so, in that sense, James Tour is correct. But the thing is, the pursuit of finding out how life could come about for some reason has real world applications that save lives. Right now, if you got the COVID vaccination, or any other vaccination in the last 10, 15, 20 years, you probably got a vaccination that was encapsulated in what are known as microspheres, which what they do is they protect the actual active piece of mRNA, which is what causes your ribosomes to create a specific protein. What that does is then from there, they it protects that piece of mRNA from your body's own natural defenses. So then it's delivered intact, and you actually produce that protein. And so I hope I didn't go too far into that, but that is an application that was deduced by trying to figure out how a cell could occur, how a cell could happen, how a cell membrane could ever manifest. And that was done by Sidney Fox. Very well published. He used what are called proteinoids and amino acids. Modern day microspheres are produced with lipids, but they're based on his work, and that is a direct application of abiogenesis. Even if abiogenesis is wrong, it is still saving lives.
And it's I one of the things I didn't like about Tour's argument is that he wants one person to have this formula where that's going to be something that's going to come together from a lot of fields of research, because a lot of uh, he was pointing out, well, there's just these couple experts out there, but there's a lot of related fields of research that add to the bit to the body of knowledge that they're going to use as well, and it'll all come together. But I think eventually what they'll say is, like you were pointing out, well, how could life have formed? I think it's always going to be how could life have formed, because we may never know the exact moment, place, time, and that it happened. And then they're always going to say, well, but you don't know the exact moment, place, and time. It's always going to be, these are how we think it could have happened because here's the chemistry that we have the best explanation for.
I actually kind of equate it to something else. Another things, as you probably saw before in a bio I had, I went from running from one thing to running a children's entertainment industry, a business, and in that, one of those things that I would do was magic, and I learned a lot about the basics of magic. And one of the things that's interesting is now I'll watch a magic video or watch somebody who's just done a magic trick. I'll watch David Blaine or something like that, and people ask me, "Do you know how he did it?" And my answer is, I don't know how he did it. I know how I would do it, because I do have. Obviously, it's not a miracle. If you ask David Blaine, it really isn't a miracle. But I could tell you maybe 3 or 4 different ways that he could have achieved whatever illusion he did. And there is no reason, once you've come up with one method, you don't need to know the actual method to know that it could possibly have happened. That is one of the major arguments I have against um, the irreducible complexity arguments, or any of the argument from ignorance arguments, is that okay, all we have to do is come up with one way where that's feasible, and your entire argument is gone. You can argue that we don't have any proof that that's how it happened, but we still know that it can happen. Your argument is done. And
The either or argument that leaves out all the other possibilities.
right. And so, I mean, but it's interesting you mentioned that, because I mean that's something I've noticed. I mean, even with it that particular kind of argumentation comes across in a lot of other things, not just creationism. For example, there are people that will tell you that the pyramids must have been built by aliens, because even we don't know today how the pyramids were built, which is not the same thing as saying we can't build them ourselves. We can build them. We just don't know how they built them.
Well, we know how they could have built them.
Right.
And again, that's that word, and they like to latch onto that and say, well, they don't know. They don't know. And well, it's rocks, it's sand, it's you can figure out how they did it with rocks and sand because that's what they had to work with.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that most of the models we have for how they did it probably are wrong, but doesn't mean it's impossible. Doesn't mean we need to invoke aliens.
And when you do, the argument falls apart because it's an alien energy source. And it's like, do you know what's inside the pyramid? Not not much.
Not much, no.
Or the Ben Carson argument, it was used for grain storage. And again, there's not room inside. It's mostly filled with rocks. It's a bunch of rocks that's finished on the outside, and it's got maybe a tomb inside for somebody. That's
I gotta be certain. I gotta believe that Ben Carson's a nice guy. He seems like a really nice guy. Just not somebody you'd get science from, but I mean, you should. I mean, when it comes to what was he, a brain surgeon? If I'm not correct.
oh, definitely. If it
Yeah,
he
very intelligent.
famously separated the twins that were separated at the or conjoined twins that
Yeah,
were joined at the head, and he did the operation, and he's the guy to go to for that. But with many gifted people, yes, you go to them for their gift, but nothing else.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
yeah, bless their hearts. They got to stay in their field, which seems to be a gift, and that's great, and we benefit from it. But please just stay there. We appreciate where you're at.
Yeah, I will say it was entertaining. No, at least it was entertaining. The whole grain thing. So that was funny.
So where I wanted to ask you, where do you speak or put yourself then as far as your religious convictions? Are you non-religious, religious, agnostic, atheist? What's your position these days?
I am certainly non-religious. I am certainly not one who believes in a god, um, which by some definitions would put me as a solid atheist. But it seems like there's a there's a debate even amongst atheists on what constitutes atheism. So I care more about my position. My position is I am not convinced that there is a God, nor am I given any utility for that belief other than manipulating people. So I don't have a belief in God. I would be more apt to believe in Bigfoot than God right now. I said that
All
for you.
hail, all hail Bigfoot.
No,
Thank
actually,
you,
I've
thank you, thank, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
I thought
Much
I'd
love,
mention that for you.
much
I've
love.
actually thought about a lot about Bigfoot because it would be nice. I lived in Humboldt, California for a while, not too far where most of the Bigfoots, especially the redwoods, and so I actually was very interested in it. If you want to talk about the Bigfoot, especially like the Patterson Gimlin film and any of that kind of stuff, I'm more than happy because I have my opinions on that. I
Well,
also
speaking of, after this stream this evening, I'm going to be previewing a movie with Bree. She's going to be doing a movie review, and she wants to do a pre-movie review before we watch it for the review. And I said, sure, I'd like to watch that. And Trees and I are working on a thing that's penciled down. It's not set yet, but it may be coming last Sunday of the month. We want to do a Bigfoot Alien Hour. So, yeah, if you're interested in joining sometime, Tony, we'd love to have you stop by.
I'd probably
And
be joining as a spectator because I really
in
don't
the
have
chat
my
is
mind.
great. In the chat is great. We will appreciate audience participation and everything. We're just gonna make it an hour, and we're gonna do a couple covers because we wanted to do something about Bigfoot, but there's just so much to do. And it's so I said, why don't we just pick a couple things and do a couple things each time? So we're
So
working on that because
can I
man,
ask
there's
you a
just
question
so
about that?
many Bigfoot videos. Go
Can
ahead.
I? Okay, regarding the Patterson Gimlin film, can I ask you a question about that? Okay, what is your take on the idea that, I mean, Patterson obviously shafted Gimlin in terms of the rights to it, and Gimlin has never once indicated that anything was wrong, like that he didn't actually film a Bigfoot. What is your take on that? Is Gimlin a moron, or did Gimlin actually see what he thought he saw?
Well, there's a video of a guy that claims that he was in the suit and that they shafted him and never paid him for the job.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I think there might have been a lot of. I think I would have to side with the shafting side
No kidding. All
because there
right.
seems to have been a lot of shafting going
That makes sense. Thanks. I tried to use the right word for that. Sorry.
on. And supposedly there's again another unconfirmed, but there's somebody I believe he was in Detroit that was a costume maker that said
Mhm.
he made the outfit. So
Hmm.
again, so there's a lot piled up against the authenticity side.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've seen quite a bit of it. It's just that that's the one thing that for me was like, well, I got a question in my head because maybe I guess Gimlin was shafted, but he honestly thought he saw what he thought he saw. Because if I had been shafted and I knew it was a hoax, I'd be all over it. I'm like, no
Well,
way,
and
this
I
guy's
don't.
on.
Yeah, that's another thing that what people think they saw doesn't necessarily mean that I think they're
Yeah.
lying. They could believe they saw what they saw, but that doesn't mean they saw what they saw.
Hmm.
So I would never call somebody a liar that wasn't proven in court or on video, committing a fraud or something.
That
But
makes sense.
yeah, somebody could honestly think they saw something, sure.
Okay. All right.
So we've been
Good to
going
know.
we've been going over about an hour and 15 here, and wanted to before I wrap things up here, I wanted to ask you a few things about your debates. And real quick, then, do you have any memorable moments from your debates, or were they pretty much like you said, it was just a little gish gallop, and some
M-
some
My
picking sides and not much else?
my main issue with the debates is, and the one I'm thinking of the most is Finding Truth, but Nephilim Free and Kent Hovind and a few other people. I don't remember the one guy you said. What was there was the other name, the other person I'd done
Well, I know Ahmed is from Finding Truth.
yeah, but there was another one you mentioned that I don't remember at all doing a, a debate with. But what my issue has been is staying on topic. It's that I can bring up that evolution has these real world applications, and inevitably my interlocutor will start arguing, well, it can't be, evolution can't be true because of this. I'm like, that is not what we're arguing about. For the sake of argument, I'll even give you that evolution is 100% wrong, but it still has these real world applications that you benefit from every day of your life. That is never, for some reason, they can never stick to that topic. Once I began to realize that, I became disinterested in the entire debate architecture altogether, because if we're not going to actually explore each other's ideas, where are we going with this? We're just shouting at each other, and that's kind of what I felt about with Finding Truth. If you watch that, you'll notice, I think, I don't know, at some point in time, like 45 an hour into it, is when they come back to me for my opinion, and I'm like, this this conversation should have been over 20 minutes ago. I offered real world applications for evolution. He offered no rebuttal to that at all. We're done, right? Why are we still talking? And I got a little frustrated because it was Jackson Wheat and I think Steve McCrae they decided they wanted to take him on some of his points. And to my point of view, all of his points were irrelevant. We were talking about real world applications, not whether evolution is right or wrong. I'll grant you, for the sake of argument, I'll grant you that evolution is wrong. We can still save lives with it. We can still figure out new ways to treat victims of diseases. We can still figure out ways to find resources that we need just to survive. We can't do anything like that with creationism. And that's what's important, is what can you do with it? If you can't do anything with it, why am I interested in it? Why would I even have it taught in school? And that's a frustration I have, is that they can't stick to the subject of what the real world applications are. Actually, when I think about it, Otangelo Grosso, in fact, we were started to debate, and in his very opening statement, his is like, yeah, I'll admit from the beginning that creationism has no real world applications. And then for some reason from there on, I was supposed to debate whatever subject he came prepared to debate, and I'm like, if you wanted to debate that, that should have been the debate you agreed to, not this other,
I
not
I
the
just heard
subject we did.
I just heard Otangelo's name. Randolph was going to bring him up on the talk just before I signed off to get ready for our stream here earlier, and it's like, oh no, there's Otangelo, and you know what he's going to say, you know what he's going to do. He's got it down pat, just like all the rest of them do. And it's like you said, it's like, oh well, it's okay. Other people want to address it, but you know you're not going to get anywhere because he says the same exact thing tomorrow.
Yeah, no matter what. I'm engaged in a debate right now with him on Facebook. We'll see where that goes. But what's
Well, he keeps
interesting?
promising to review my Shroud video, and he's let me down.
Oh, does he accept the idea of the shroud being genuine?
Oh yeah, he's a big Shroud guy.
I wasn't aware of that. Wow.
He
Okay.
wrote a book some. He wrote some about it. Oh yeah, he's a big Shroud guy. So I said, well, check
Wow.
out my video. I'll take it. I know what he's going to say, but
Were you the one? I may be wrong, but there's somebody that posted this argument against it about how the arms are situated, where
a little,
you
a
put your
little bit.
elbows if you put your elbows where the elbows appear in the shroud, and then try to cover your junk with it, you will not make it. Even though in the actual shroud he's got his elbows right at his side, but he's covering his junk completely.
Yeah,
uh
I touched on it a little bit, and how the biggest issue is if you follow the Bible account, he was wrapped in a shroud. Now, when you see the shroud is all nice and everything's perfectly placed. How do you wrap somebody and carry them from the cross to the tomb without making a big smeared mess all over the shroud?
I don't know. Wasn't it supposedly that it was like energy that was released from him being
Well, there's blood on it. There's blood on it. So
oh, oh,
if there's blood on it, why isn't it just smeared everywhere? That's one of the big
that's
bottom
true.
lines I have. If you wrap a bloody body and carry it,
Yeah,
it's
blood's
not going
gonna
to
go
be
everywhere.
the blood's just going to be at the head, at the wrist, it looks like it was purposely placed. And there was somebody that said they made it. So it seems
Okay,
like
I tried to be
my
the devil's
conclusion
advocate.
was, yeah, my conclusion was it didn't exist before the 1300s ACE. So
All right, well, I can't disagree with you.
that's where I'm going to stick. But yeah, so I told you I wanted to have a little fun, but I wanted to ask you real quick. So did you run out of creationist talking points at 104? Is that kind of where the series leveled off?
It didn't really level off there. It's that I got busy.
Okay.
I have my own job, but then also I
I
got a lot
thought
of
maybe
side
you I
gigs.
thought maybe you said, well, that's all of them.
No, there's going to be more. I am actually
Okay.
working on more now.
Great.
But there was the thing is that I got a lot of professional gigs out of my channel. I've gotten a lot of voiceover gigs, and then I've also
That's
gotten a
great too.
lot of
Good to hear.
editing gigs because I'm doing some videography for, well, because for for cheerleading teams, I have my wife is a cheer coach, so it's kind of led to me getting gigs as a videographer for cheer teams. I've also done a lot of industrial videos, especially for the local unions here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Done an entire series for their inductees of the history of the unions, and so that's taken up a lot of my time, and
Well,
so that's
that's
kind of what.
fantastic. Good for you. Glad to hear you got all of that going on. That is great.
Yeah, so it's just that I've been busy. It's not because I don't have
Sure,
anything more to say.
sure. And what about the read between the lines? Is that going to be going on too? Is that going to be a
Yeah, that's going to be harder and
two channel
slower.
thing or okay?
It's where I really would prefer to go, but it's also it's maybe it's a harder group of videos to make because I am right now what I did my first episode of it, my only episode is with a subject I'm very familiar with and that I can speak with some kind of an authority because the whole point of it is real world applications. When it comes to the other subjects I want to discuss, like the pro life versus pro choice, um, uh, gun rights versus gun control, these are subjects that are more nuanced than either side really want to take or want to accept, and they need to be addressed on both sides of on both sides of them. And the idea of that show is ultimately to kind of try to find a common ground where you can accept one side while still feeling the way you feel, and that's it's a bit more nuanced, a little bit more difficult. um, I do have, and unfortunately, it's also it's tainted by the fact that no matter what you're going to do, you're going to have your own opinion, and I do have my opinion on all of these subjects, even if my opinion might be, transgender issues is something that I'm very, um, I want to see more of a Breeze material because she's a friend of mine on Facebook. I didn't even know she had a channel, and I would love to learn more. And that's because I come from a generation that had certain things that you accepted, and I am more than happy to accept any group. But there's certain questions that come up that I'd like to have the answers to, and
Sure.
so some of these are subjects that are difficult to address because I have my feelings on them, but then I also have to go ahead and go through the reality of those things. And some of the details require a little bit more nuance than just this is true and this is not.
You can look up Stephanie Helms. She
Stephanie Helms. Okay.
she does a lot of videos about the transgender issues.
Okay. Well, I was a big fan of Zinnia Jones for a long time. If nobody knows who
Oh,
she
there are
was,
some others too, but that's just
yeah,
what comes to mind.
she gave me some pretty amazing perspectives. I mean, I was already okay with, for example, gay marriage, but she did a video, and I can't even. I feel bad because I can't even say for sure that she wishes to be identified as she, but it seems like that's so. At any rate, she did a video about gay marriage when gay marriage was still was still for the most part illegal, and the some of the arguments against gay marriage that seemed like they had validity. For example, there was this concern about child molestation, and then the first thing she brings up is that people that are advocates against gay marriage don't seem to have a problem with heterosexual people who have actually committed child molestation and have actually been convicted. They have no problem with them getting married.
Hmm.
So that falls apart. It really gave me an empirical way of arguing against the objections that are often presented. And
I
if
I
Bree
remember the
is helpful in
civil
that, What's
Yeah,
that?
I remember the civil unions argument, but then separate but equal. And it's like, it's separate but equal. It's just not,
It really isn't, because
so yeah,
with a civil
it
union,
kind
you
of
don't get
falls
to.
apart. Yeah,
With a civil union, you don't get to right to be at your partner's bedside when they're dying.
yeah.
You don't have that right.
One by one, the arguments, yeah, they fell flat. So
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, so we
agree.
know about that. So, I'm sure we
Bree,
took
yeah,
a
Bree is
dark
great.
turn on this.
Yeah, Bree's great to talk to. Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, she's going to be previewing that little video later. So
I'll be
yeah,
watching.
I love talking with Bree. It's going to be on her Discord. So if you're on her Discord, or send her a friend there on her Discord.
Okay.
And okay, so and we know you're not going to be doing any more debates. Then is that right?
I
Not
can't say I
not
won't
right.
be, but
Not right
but
now. Maybe.
I
Maybe
don't
we
have any
can.
immediate plans. But I mean,
Okay.
there's got to be some way to keep people on topic. And you were just talking about the moderator for the Tour and Farina debate, and how that that moderator did almost nothing.
Did nothing. Right.
Somebody's got to keep it'd be nice to have a moderator that kept things on the topic. And I'm not saying, I'm not criticizing any of the moderators I've dealt with, because it's very easy to get caught up in the conversation, especially on a heated subject. But somebody's got to be able to keep that in check. If you're gonna be bringing up superfluous arguments, those need to be discarded.
I agree. And I appreciate the discussion. It's been a great discussion. I appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody in the chat for joining us. And just for fun, before we wrap things up here, because we're going to keep it to an hour and a half, and it's an hour and a half. So before we go, we're going to have a little quiz here I put together for Tony, and we're gonna test his music trivia abilities here. And
Oh gosh.
feel free in the chat if you want to play along. Okay. So I've got 20 questions for you, and I've got a bonus question if you want to take it on.
Okay.
And we'll roll through them real quick, and then I'll let you go. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay. Number one, which artist is also known as Slim Shady?
Marshall Mathers or Eminem?
Correct. The classic album Bat Out of Hell is by who?
Meatloaf.
Correct. Number three, which astronomer is name dropped in Bohemian Rhapsody?
Galileo.
Correct. What was the first music video to ever air on MTV?
Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles.
Correct. What artist recorded two of their best selling albums while they were behind bars?
Wow. Let me go ahead and take a guess here. Not going to say it's true, but let me guess that Bob Marley.
Close. Johnny Cash.
Oh, I should have known that. Okay.
That's all right. I've got a couple. I'll let you make it up. So you've only missed one. You're doing really good.
Thank you.
Number six. What kind of car does Prince sing about in his 1983 hit?
A little red Corvette.
Correct. Number seven. The rock guitarist is said to be the inspiration for Johnny Depp's Captain Sparrow character in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Keith Richards.
Correct. 8. Ozzy Osbourne was in what heavy metal band?
Black Sabbath.
Correct. Who adorned his last piano with 350 pounds of rhinestones?
Liberace.
Correct. Where is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Oh my gosh.
What state?
Oh gosh, I should know this, but Missouri.
No, Ohio.
Ah.
That's 2. You're doing really good. What group is famous for the song My Generation?
Oh, the Who. I thought you were going to say Sharona. I was going to say the Knack.
Correct. Thomas Dolby released the song She Blinded Me with
Science.
Correct. They're out of this world. The winners of an MTV Video Music Award receive a 12-inch statuette depicting someone of what occupation?
An astronaut.
Correct. What adolescently named lead singer was the frontman for the 1980s pop group Culture Club?
Boy George.
Correct. Number 15, we're almost there. Jethro Tull released a 1971 album titled after what song, arguably their most famous tune, also the name of a device invented in France in
Aqualung.
1942.
Sorry,
Correct.
Aqualung. Sorry.
That's all you jump right in, you know. 16, associated with bluegrass, folk, and country music. This instrument is typically fitted with 4 or 5 strings, but there are other models that use as many as 6.
A banjo?
Correct.
Hmm.
Number 17. Which Carly Simon smash hit song from 1971 was allegedly about actor Warren Beatty?
I heard it was about David Crosby, but it's You're So Vain.
Correct. 18. Which train were Gladys Knight and the Pips going to take in 1973?
Would it be the midnight train to Georgia?
Correct. 19. What is the Iron Maiden's mascot called?
Eddie.
Correct. 20. The rock band AC/DC originates from which country?
Australia.
Correct. Now I'm going to let you make up the 2 you missed.
Okay.
How many strings does a standard violin have?
Ooh, 4.
Correct. All right, you took 1 away. Name the 4 members of the Monkees.
Davy Jones. Peter. I don't know the rest.
All right, we'll skip that one. I'll give you a pass.
Okay.
You going to take a pass on that one?
Okay, I can accept that I lost, but okay.
We'll go. No, we'll go. You're only off 1.
Okay.
We're going to get you perfect. In 1981, a hit song called 9 to 5 also had a film of the same name. Who's it by?
Dolly Parton.
Correct. See, you're back at 0. Now I'm going to let you get ahead.
Okay.
What rock guitarist played on the Michael Jackson song Beat It?
Eddie Van Halen.
Correct. And here's another bonus. Huey from Huey Lewis and the News played which instrument?
I'm assuming guitar.
Harmonica.
No shit. I mean, no kidding.
You came out 1 ahead.
Okay.
Now you can risk it all, or stay where you're at with the super bonus question.
I'll go ahead.
Are you willing to take it on?
I'll go for broke.
All right, and this you said you know a little bit about pop music and in the 80s and everything, right?
Yeah.
So this should be the test, and everybody out there watching this is the test for anybody that grew up with MTV or any of that. Annie Lennox is the most famous of the Eurythmics duo. Who was the other member?
Dave Stewart.
Congratulations, sir. You win the music trivia. You got the super bonus question correct.
Thank you.
So everybody knows he was not let in on any of the answers. He played fair and square. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
You do know a fair amount of music trivia.
Those are some hard questions you gave me.
You did very well. You did very well. So I
Thank
hope
you.
you had a good time. I had a
Oh yeah.
great time talking with you, and I look forward to the content to come. And everybody, please go check out Tony's channel. I put a link in the description, and I'm sure everybody's looking forward to your content to come. And if you enjoy discussions like these, please hit the like and the comment and hit subscribe with a bell so you get notifications for future videos to come. And I will see you then.